Hello, this is Matthew Chan.
And I am Tony Centavo.
Welcome to the latest episode of TurnKey Publishing. And in today's episode, Tony's going to be leading the discussion. And we're going to get into some nuts and bolts stuff of the way I view things. And most specifically, we're going to talk about cover design. So Tony, we've got some of my books here, and with just different looks. So what strikes out? What's your first impression when you look at some of these books?
Well, I guess I'll show it to everybody as we're talking about. You mentioned he's got several of his books here. I'll just hold them up very briefly just to kind of start.
Okay.
Got big ones, small ones, green ones.
Yeah, this is the okay. This is my first book, The Intrepid Way. As you can see, has a red and yellow look to it. My second series was the Turnkey Investor series. It has a blue and yellow white look. If you can hold that one. And the TurnKey Publishing series has this sort of a green, turquoise green look with white fonts and a yellow highlighting.
Yeah. Now let me ask you a question, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
From the standpoint, there's some rhyme and reason to how books look. I'm sure most of us, including myself, had never really thought about design. And you told me that you had actually studied many book covers before you went about the process of designing your own. So what are some of the technical things that people need to be conscious of as they go forth to, this is the billboard for your book. This is what, when I go into the bookstore, a lot of times, whether or not I even pick it up, it's got to catch my attention, and then it's got to strike me, and there are things placed in certain places. All right, so just kind of launch into describing using which one as an example you want.
Right. Well, some of the things I want to talk about.
Oh, I can do like Vanna White. But anyway.
Yeah, I wish we could get Vanna White here. She's a lot more attractive than you are.
I give her credit for that.
Of course, if Vanna White was here, we probably wouldn't be talking about anything but publishing. But in any case,
sorry to digress.
See, this is what happens when you do an unscripted show. You just never know what people are going to say on air.
And you're not getting paid either. Hey?
Exactly, right. So I have no hold on him. He could just pick up and leave. But anyway, well, the first thing that I look at in terms of my book covers is this going to be part of a brand? Okay. Now, back when I started in 2003, I looked at all the different book covers that had branding in mind.
Okay.
So there is a fundamental difference between a branded book versus an unbranded book. A branded book has a fairly consistent look. And what I mean by consistent look is they've got similar fonts, they've got similar color schemes. That is the most distinctive that people notice. Like the Complete Idiot's Guide.
Okay.
Or the Dummies Guide.
Okay, yeah.
Or the Rich Dad books.
Poor Dad. That was the one that came to mind when you were saying
if you look at it. And even in novels. Now, I don't read a lot of novels, but I know, they have this distinctive look.
Stephen King's books all have a...
That's right. They all have a look and feel.
Okay, yeah.
So I studied a lot of business books, and specifically branding, because I knew there was going to be, well, I don't want to say I knew. I planned there to be multiple books on any given title that I launched. That's the plan. So, and that's why my first book, you can see the book was on entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship, in my view, you have to be dynamic. It's there's a lot of uncertainty and there's more energy. So hence, I chose the red scheme. And of course, if you're going to have a red cover, you got to have something that contrasts. And then I went with white and yellow. So this is that was the rationale for the Intrepid Way series. Now, when I went on to do the Investor series, I chose a blue look. Okay.
Was there any reason for blue?
Yeah, psychologically, blue is safe, conservative, it's calming. You won't see too many books on money and safe investing using a red cover. It just doesn't jive well.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Blue is water, calming, and sky, and so psychologically, that's the way it plays out. And of course, when I got to TurnKey Publishing, I can't say that I have a color in mind. There were certain colors I did want to avoid. Certainly, I wanted to avoid the red. I wanted to avoid the blue. I did toy with some different colors, and I went with a more greenish type of tone to be more distinctive.
That looks nice. I mean,
Now, the thing that people need to understand, you mentioned something about bookstores. Well, I cannot say that my books would lend itself well to a bookstore. But if any of them were going to lend themselves better to a bookstore, I would say my first few books were more designed in that way. And the reason how you can tell that is when you pick up this book, you'll find that not only is there like a title and a subtitle, but there's actually a design element.
okay.
An icon or a graphic. And here I also had an icon and graphic. But by the time I got to the TurnKey Publishing series, you'll find it's all text. It's actually kind of a boring cover. And the reason for that is I made no bones about it that this was going to be sold on the internet. I did not think this was going to be bookstore friendly. I knew who my audience was. Mm-hmm. In fact, in my effort to move things along, I had to simplify the covers more. I didn't want to have to depend on a graphic artist.
Okay.
Now, do I recommend that? That's a hard choice. I mean, I wouldn't say I would necessarily recommend it because I do think that.
Well, what are the pros and cons?
Well, the pros is
in that sense.
Well, the fact is it cost money and it took time and money to have to create this, and you had to go through many iterations. You have to try to explain a concept to somebody, and so there's a lot of back and forth. It takes up a lot of time to create images that represent your book.
But now with that, let me address this in two layers or two sides. Would you say that having graphic design would help if your intent was to have the book sold in a bookstore and therefore worth the investment of time and money? Or is that a pragmatic decision that someone needs to consider on the front end?
I am not about working with the bookstores.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to put that out there. I mean, basically, my subtitle of this, the TurnKey Publishing book, says how to create a profitable publishing business without any help from publishers, bookstores, or their agents. And I guess you can say I know too much. The battle to get into the bookstores is too hard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's not something that I want to fight. Now, as it turns out, with recent distribution options through Lightning stores, I now, for many of my titles, have the option of going into the bookstores. But the bookstores have to order them. But anyway, they're not just going to automatically show up. Most of my sales come through the internet, and I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, so back to the issue that you were addressing. I guess the points I'm taking, because this is information that is going to be useful to me. You said you're going to spend time and money on getting a graphic artist to add, I guess some visual interest to your cover, and that only matters most if you're wanting to have it on your coffee table to entertain guests, or if you want to have it picked up, as something that captures the eye in the bookstore. Going back to the bookstore being the more important.
Well, the thing about it is, you can always, if you really want to know what's going on with the book covers, just look at the traditional publishing industry. Now, as you know, I'm not much of a follower.
Right.
Okay,
right.
But I find it very, very interesting that a lot of the recent business books, they're actually very simplistic. I mean, they're almost more simplistic than mine. My covers are actually fairly simplistic.
Okay.
They've gone to like these solid white covers and just one title, like 1 or 2 word titles. And that's about it. I mean, they're practically naked covers. Mm-hmm. A lot of the books I've been buying from, well-established publishing houses, they have very simple covers. So there seems to be a movement towards simplicity, at least in terms of business books, which is really my specialty.
Gotcha. Well, in addition to considerations that need to go into the design elements, what about layout? Are there any other, what else would you say about designing the cover?
Well, I think your word was actually quite appropriate when you said layout. Now, again, I always encourage everybody, go online or go to your bookstores and look at a lot of book covers and find out what attracts you and what represents you. Something that you can stand by. For example, the thing that works for me is I believe in having a large title.
Okay, let's hold it up.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen,
okay.
Very large title.
Right? And this is actually fairly large, if you can see. And this is maybe a little bit smaller, but it's still pretty prominent. And the reason why I want the title to be large is when you shrink it down on the internet, it has to be readable. Okay, to like a 1-inch icon. I want the title to be able to be read. And a lot of the more recent covers, you can't actually read some of the text. Now, one of the things that people will notice is, let me show this one here, especially. This one takes it to more of an extreme. You'll find that the subtitle is actually kind of wordy. All right?
Okay.
It's more so than my earlier books. And the reason being is, I make no bones about it that I'm an unknown author. And so one of the ways that I use to create awareness of my books is to simply be prominent in the search engines.
Okay.
I don't pay for the service. I just do it organically. And part of it is putting in keywords in it. So if you shrink this cover on the internet, you're probably not going to be able to make out the subtitle. You're only going to make out the big title.
Right.
But the subtitle is important in that you want to get found in search engines. So that's one of the things that I do. Now, another point is that I like using high contrast colors. Again, I'm very internet driven. You don't want like blue fonts, light blue on dark blue, for example.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I like sharp contrasts. The bright yellow on a dark blue, a bright yellow and bright white on a dark red. This one here has got bright white and a black on a green. Does that make sense? And so that's the way I view the cover elements in terms of making what I call your book covers to pop out. Okay?
Okay.
Now go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one of the things that I noticed that I had never seen on the front cover, now I can't say I paid attention to the back cover, but I can just visualize.
Uh-huh.
I'd never seen anybody have their web address information on the front cover of a book. What was the reason? I know internet driven, but any other rationale for the placement of it, I guess?
Yes. Well, I think most people can figure out why I put the web's address on, because we put our website addresses on everything nowadays. It's really so that you can get found, so people can visit your website. But despite this, why is it not done on most books? Because it's considered tacky. Seriously. Okay? I am not the first guy that have ever come along and came up with the idea to say, hey, let's put an old website address, on our product. In this case, we're talking about a book. So most of these website addresses, they're snuck out in the back. And of course, I did the obligatory back cover website address, and it's somewhere tucked away in the bottom, just like a lot of, the other books. But I also put it in the front cover. But I do it because the benefits outweigh the perceived notions of tackiness. But yes, to this very day in 2011, and I've been doing this since, for however many, since 2003, 2004, it's still not being done because it's, in my view, the traditional publishing industry, it's considered tacky and out of form. But I will tell you, I have gotten a lot of traffic and awareness of it.
Well, I was going to say, I don't see it as tacky. I just have never seen it on there before.
Yeah.
So, it didn't detract. I just saw it. I had no emotional response. So to think that the others think it's tacky, if you're beating the competition with it, then they'll catch up one day.
Well, the thing about it is that one of the things, remember I told you about, when I got into develop my TurnKey Publishing system, that I was kind of clear of what kind of benefits I wanted. Okay? Presumably, if you're a celebrity, you wouldn't be listening to this video, okay? If you've got a huge following, you don't need to be watching these videos, you don't need to buy my book, okay? You've got a whole different thing going. Okay, the book, my system is designed for an unknown author that had given them a fighting chance to benefit from their work. And the fact of the matter is, when you're an unknown author, your sales will be low for a long time in the beginning.
Right.
Okay? So you need to maximize the benefits. And one of those benefits is, how do you benefit without ever making a sale?
Okay.
And the way to benefit without ever making a sale is obviously creating awareness of your name but also giving them a place to go. So when people go on to Amazon.com, okay, and they see a book, and maybe for whatever reason my book is too expensive, they don't like it, whatever, or they want to check me out, they can look at it and say, hey, I don't know if I want to buy this book. But the fact that they find my website address on there, it's like free advertising.
That's true. Yeah. And now this is just my perception. Something about seeing the web address on the cover seems to elevate the name of the unknown to bigger than who is this guy. I mean, it just does a little something.
You think so?
Mean, to me, nobody else might feel that way, but he has an actual website, which is probably not that uncommon nowadays, but it just speaks. It's almost like it flashes at you. Not just the fact that it's there, but it says something of more substance in the identity of the author.
Well, thanks.
That's just a notion.
Now, I try not to make, now I did say that a lot of traditional publishers won't do it because they feel it's tacky, okay? But I do it anyway. But having said that, there is a middle ground that I do try to strive for. In other words, I do want to be viewed, but I don't want it to be in your face. So if you look at these covers, you'll find that you'll have to squint your eyes a little bit on your screen to look at this address, because it's not as big as this. If I really wanted to be tacky, I would have blown this sucker way up.
Okay.
So even I have a certain sensibility that I don't really want to be too in your face about it. I will put it on the front cover, but I won't make it so prominent. I mean, it's still smaller than my subtitles, as you can see here. Okay?
All right. And now, what about, what do you call this side part over here?
We call that a spine.
The spine, okay.
Now, the spine is important only from a physical standpoint, like if it was in a bookstore or in your shelf. But most of the time, the spine never gets seen. But I will tell you that when I do the spine, I mean, obviously I'm going to take every advantage I can. I try to make the fonts as large as it can be, and still fit. As you can see, the fonts go all the way from top to bottom here.
Right, okay.
Okay? And, I mean, it's just a very tight amount of space here, okay? I mean, it's like half an inch, usually, at most. You don't have a lot of space to work with, and it's very easy to sometimes run off the spine, especially if you have a long title.
Okay.
And, but, as far as internet marketing is concerned, it's actually not that important.
Right, because they only generally show the front, or they might do a front and back.
Right.
Okay.
Now, speaking of the back cover, now the back cover is, the way I look at it is there are 3 or 4 different sections here, okay? Now, what I do is, this actually conforms to a lot of the publishing industry. They'll put the category of the book. So if you want to hold that one up, the back view, you'll find that I do put a category.
Yes, we have publishing, self-publishing.
Right. This one is entrepreneurship, personal finance, and lifestyle. This one is investments and real estate. Okay, so that's the first element. Now, if you pay attention, it actually wraps around very conveniently to the front side to
the web
address. Because when you actually design this, it's actually like this on screen. I don't know if you knew that, Tony.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, when you design it, it's actually one big piece of paper that's that wide. But most people think you design the front, back, and the spine. It's actually one big sheet of paper.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, I have what we call a benefits box. Okay, and I tend to put it, in this case, I put it off to the side. Okay, here it was more horizontal, this was more vertical, but it is highlighted. What are you going to get out of reading this book? And that's your little marketing take.
Okay. Now, something I noticed, just visually, the gold pops out as headline.
Yes,
like
that's
here,
a good point.
It says, learn the secret of independent publishing traditional publishers don't want you to know. Then it says, myths that traditional publishers perpetuate. And then you come down to the benefits box, and it kind of articulates, even though you got that white text beneath each one of those, it's almost like you read this, and then that.
Yes.
The eyes flow that way. Was that by design, or was that by
Well, You know, a lot of it sometimes is
Just a
it's
magic
not
moment.
it's not a form. Well, no, I gave it some thought, and
Okay.
this was a format that I felt that would work for me. Again, when I chose the design elements, it was not for that book. I wanted to be able to articulate, like I am in this video, and to you, what I did. So yes, you did notice a pattern. There is a headline, and you notice it is kind of bright and bolded, and there's a whole bunch of regular text. And there's a secondary teaser title. If you look, in all three, there's a secondary title.
Yeah.
I don't just limit it to one title.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a secondary title. And, of course, we got the benefits box in all of them. And, of course, this little blurb of what the book is about. Now, on this one here, I didn't do it here, but I did do it on the Intrepid Way. There's a concluding paragraph.
Oh, okay. And who's that guy?
Yeah, that's the author photo, and I'm really I gotta tell you, it is sort of a pet peeve of mine. I hate looking at photos that were 10-year-old photos, and this is probably going to upset some women here, but I think women are most notorious for that. I'm sure there's a fair share of guys, but I think, you know, perhaps women are a little bit more sensitive to the aging process. They use a more youthful photo, and they continue to use that youthful photo. You know, even though it's been like years and years and years. I was like, oh my God. But anyway.
Now, let me ask another question.
You were conveniently silent there, Tony.
I've been around a while and wise enough to know. But now, is the placement of the IBN number,
ISBN.
pricing, ISBN, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
ISBN number, is that like, you know, industry standard for it to be sitting right there? 'Cause I
It
noticed-
does not have to be here. I've seen the ISBN up on top, and I've seen it in all different places, to be
Okay.
honest with you. I mean, as long as it's in the back, the barcode. But obviously the ISBN, as far as I'm concerned, is really it's a necessary evil. So I'm certainly not going to put it on what I consider prime real estate of a book cover at the top,
Yeah.
or anywhere near the top. I mean, I am going to bury it. I mean, it is there for all very obligatory reasons.
Well, the only other thing I can say that I appreciate about your books, because now, again, I go to bookstores and I get a book and I spend 45 seconds trying to figure out how much does the book cost? Because like they'll have the price like some obscure place. And I like the fact that I know this is $21.95. I mean, you know.
You mean you can't read this barcode? It's in here. It's in the barcode.
Oh, really? I didn't
Yeah.
see. I never knew that it was
Yeah.
in the barcode.
Well, the barcode is obviously for cash registers, or you know, even with Amazon, I think they they
But I'm
scan it for
saying your
inventory.
pricing is visibly
Oh yeah.
evident versus, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Now, other people, other than the fact that you know the book costs something and you're looking for it, it's just, you know, you get frustrated. Just a little tinge of frustration. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you don't have that problem when you go buy a gallon of milk or anything, you know, it's whatever. But anyway, I think your books are attractive, and from the standpoint of the points that you made in relation to the bookstore shelves, which is not where you're seeking to compete, but in the internet domain. I did have a question I wanted to ask
Sure,
before we
go
run
ahead.
out of time. When it comes to your teaser titles, do you have any coaching points about coming up with something that captures the audience?
You know,
the buyer?
you're very observant.
I'm a salesman.
Yeah, you're very observant. This is something I would not get into, at least in this episode.
Oh,
I mean, it's
okay.
just way beyond. But I mean, I'm happy to touch on it. There is sort of an art form to writing the text. You know, I mean, of telling what your book about and what the benefits are. And I like to stir the pot a little bit.
Okay.
And you know but you know me already. That's kind of my take. I like to stir
sure
the
our
pot.
viewers know you by
I like
now,
to.
too.
I like to make it thought provoking.
Right.
You know, and kind of challenge the norms. And it's like, I want people to do that. And that's the way I write it. And I do spend a good amount of time on that. I mean, what you see here, I mean, I have spent, not necessarily one sitting, but I've spent hours on it. Because the thing about it is the text on the back is actually very short.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you're writing, you cover so many different ideas. And sometimes it's very, very difficult to take yourself out of the work and figure out what does a potential reader or customer want. what is meaningful to them, because what's meaningful to you may not be necessarily meaningful to them. And I will say it's very, very difficult.
Right. Well, I was thinking as we were having this conversation, what do I physically do? And everybody, and maybe you do the same thing, maybe different, but I go through the bookstore, usually you see this. I say, oh, okay, and then I get that, and I look at this, and it says, okay, got my attention. To me, this is where it sells the book. You know, this is the sales presentation.
Yeah.
You know, you're enticing, in this one, learn the secrets of independent publishing traditional publishers don't want you to know. It's kind of like there's secrets in here, okay? Myths that traditional publishers perpetuate. You know, in other words, you know, I want to know, and I don't have time to, you know, then I go to table of contents to say, okay, I didn't really tell
That's
me
exactly
all that much
what
stuff.
I do too. Yeah.
Then dadgummit, okay, $21.95, I'll buy it, you know. Is that fairly close to a normal?
You know, actually, that is very
process?
close. That is very close to how I look at a book.
Yeah.
I do look at the front cover. I look at the spine, kind of very much like you did. And one thing that you probably just because we were in a rush, I like to look at the copyright page. You know what year it was written.
Okay, don't do that.
Okay, well I do.
Anyway,
yeah, I mean I look at what year the book was written and who it was published by and stuff like that. But yeah, then I go to the table of contents because you want to get an idea. So now again, the book. My approach to the covers, as if you're an independent publisher, you've got to take yourself out of what the traditional publishers are looking for. For example, when I was attempting to get into traditional publishing and writing for a computer textbook, okay, this was back in 1997, they will not allow you to put your name anywhere. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you not want to recognize your writers? They would relegate, if they would list it, it would be very, very small. And yet it costs nothing, almost nothing, you know, at least in the inside pages to give it some prominence.
Right.
You know, that's why I'm very, very generous about, you know, listing my friends' names or people that I work with, because it costs me nothing to recognize them.
Right, true.
But these traditional publishers, they almost want to minimize the author name, unless you're a celebrity author. And I find that to be very, you know, I find that to be very petty. But again, traditional publishers are not in the business of necessarily looking out for you. Okay, when you get, especially if you're an unknown, you want to get every benefit out of it.
Right.
So again, part of it is making sure your all the elements stick out, they're visible, and they all tell something about what you're all about. Well, as we wrap up this episode, I hope this episode has helped people out as far as looking at, you know, the different elements, the design elements of a book cover, because I think it is very important. And I think, like even you, Tony, our audience members know that you are going to have to decide what your book cover is going to be. You may have the help of an assistant, of a graphic artist,
Right.
or a designer, but guess what, Tony? You will ultimately have to decide what colors to use, what fonts, and so forth.
Okay. Well, now that I realize that's another responsibility, and the points that you made are very helpful, because again, all of us who are engaged in this and viewing this discussion, you know, we go to bookstores. You know, it's like I never really paid attention to milk cartons. I mean, all these things. No, but seriously,
Yeah.
someone had a conscious thought, and there was a marketing element to it.
There is.
And generally, things that are done with the intent to sell are done very deliberately. Now, from the consumer side of it, we respond and we react. So to get on the other side of that dynamic has been very interesting that we've discussed that today.
Okay. Well, this is a little bit more technical episode, and I promise that we won't get too many episodes that are overly technical, but I did feel like cover design is an important discussion that every author will face at some point. It does represent who they are and their work, and I say that the more knowledgeable you are and the more conscious you are of these design elements, the better a job you will do when you get to that point, and you'll be more satisfied with the end result.
Fantastic.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Next time, be good.